Good evening and welcome to another post-game Leafs reaction show. The Leafs were in New York tonight, another road victory. My name is Kyle Andrew. You are watching live on the Toronto Sports Russia Network, brought to you by Bet Rivers, and I am once again joined by esteemed NHL analyst and friend EJ Hradek. EJ, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Kyle. That was a nail biter. It was a nail biter.
They're winning a lot of different ways right now, aren't they?
Yes.
Nothing was great tonight. Nothing was terrible. They got badly outshot, but the shots were kind of. What did you see out there?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I thought they kept the Rangers to the outside. The Rangers had a lot of perimeter chances. I didn't think they got really on the inside a lot. When they did, Stolarz made, the saves that he needed to make in the game. Every time there was adversity in the game for the Leafs, they responded, right? They got the lead. The Rangers tied it. They jumped out again. The Rangers got a shorthanded goal to tie it. They're in their building. They're desperate. Their momentum is on their side. And what do the Leafs do? They come back, and the big line was able to get it going. A simple dump and play by Matthews. And there's a lot to be said for just rimming the puck in a tie game when you're on the road and you're not exactly, you don't have a play in front of you. He rimmed it in. Marner made a great play because you see Shesterkin plays it. Marner sprints to the spot and kind of jumps up in the glass to block the clearing attempt by Shesterkin. The puck kind of squirts to Matthews. He gets it to Nyes, and Nyes scores what proved to be the game-winning goal. So, really, those are the three guys, right? You're thinking about all the skill. We saw that skill on Tuesday night, particularly from Marner, right? Tonight, it was a meat and potatoes play, but just good hustle, and really, really give Marner a lot of credit for getting in there and jumping up to block that play off the glass by Shesterkin, and it led to the game winner.
And we'll come back to Marner because he had a milestone night tonight. He's been unbelievable for the last month of his hockey career, both on international level thing. But the Leafs, again, they're still on the road and they're finding different ways to win each night. Some nights Stolarz is stealing the game. Tonight he's simply doing the job, which he did very well. And guys are stepping up left, right, and center. Domi still can't find the back of the net, but he set up an incredible early goal for them on the power play, which just, as you state, it's just a different way to win every single night is showing the depth of this hockey team right now.
Yeah, no question about it. They're writing a great story so far this year. And, you go back to that opening power play goal in the first minute plus of the game. They get the power play opportunity. And I can tell you, Kyle, that getting a power play early in the game is tricky because you haven't been able to kind of get into the game, right? Especially as you're on the road, and you got to hope that you can make something happen there, because if you don't score there, the other team has immediate momentum in the game, and you haven't been able to kind of roll your lines to get everybody into the game. So some of these guys are now cold, sitting there coming in. So it disrupts the flow that you have planned. Nobody's planning to have a power play usually in the first 90 seconds of a game. So I always feel like when a team gets one, it's really important to at least get chances and to create offense and to create energy and momentum. Even better to score. And you're right. Like, Domi made a heck of a pass, kind of a sauce pass over, and the old veteran Oliver Ekman-Larsson just one time didn't beat Shesterkin. It was a great pass, great shot. But more importantly, they took advantage of a really important opportunity early in the game, on the road, grabbed the lead, and they were able to dictate things throughout the game. Now, the Rangers tied it. They tied it a second time, but it's always nice to play with the lead for stretches of the game. That was, I think, a really important moment early on.
Yeah, and we've got a graphic up on screen right now too. In the areas in which the Leafs, they were bad on the face-off tonight. They were outshot, but again, all forced from the outside, as you stated. But they were physical. The puck possession was fairly even, from what I understand. it's just they're finding this new way and finding the power play goals, and they gave up a shorthanded goal to your good buddy Goalie. That was a great goal. That was a that was a good goal. Let's talk about the Rangers end of things tonight too. The Rangers, they played pretty well, and as you say, they're playing desperate hockey right now. And the Leafs just, they're finding ways to win, and they are a tough out every single night on the road right now. And they're not done. They've got one more Sunday afternoon in Pittsburgh, which is a very winnable hockey game, heading back home Monday night to another very winnable hockey game. Things are rolling right now, and things are clicking on all cylinder, and they do have some injury concerns, and we are 7 days away from the deadline, and we're hearing a lot of rumors right now, and a lot of the talk tonight was, of course, Braden Shen. What can you say about that rumor?
Well, I mean, first, let's just go back to one other thing about this game tonight that's important. Sure. Tanev didn't play. Right. So that's a big guy to be out of the lineup. So when you talk about the Rangers, being able to get more shots and having the better of things, certainly on the shot counter, I mean, the Leafs are missing their best defender in the game. So they still come out and win. I thought McCabe was excellent tonight. There was some plays late in the game. I thought he was really under control, really defended well. So that's an important factor in this game. They were able to go on the road without Tanev and get a win and win a really hard fought type of finish game where Tanev would be on the ice. Right, in those situations, he wasn't available tonight. They still found a way to win. As for the trade deadline, I mean, it comes down to this, right? With Braden Shen, I mean, he's a really good player. He's 33 years old. He's about a half a point per game guy in St. Louis right now. The coach knows him very well. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's a captain in St. Louis. He would fit probably as a really good third center, with the Leafs, with Tavares being there, Matthews being there. I mean, you could move him into your top six if you need to. He gives you depth. He's a really helpful player. Now, he's got a couple years left on his contract. That contract is probably not going to get better over time, right? I don't think he's going to improve moving forward. But if you think you have a chance to win this year, he can be a really helpful piece for the Leafs. Now, they'll want somebody to take money there, the Blues, or maybe a third party if they can make that happen. So that's a factor in all this. And really, at the end of the day, to get a guy like that, I mean, they're going to have to trade probably Cowan or Minton, don't you think? I mean, like those are the high-end guys in their chain, right? Right there, they're prospects. Now, the way I feel about it is this: if you think you can win, and this is an addition that really helps you, push along, let's face it, Matthews, Marner, Nylander, they're there now, right? I mean, they're there now in the mix of things. Riley, Tavares. I mean, so I think that's the decision that Brad Treliving and company will have to make is, are we willing to trade one of those players to get somebody that could really improve our group in the immediate? And so, that's the thing. And they do get to keep Shen for a couple of years. But as I say, 33, will be 34 next year. I'm not expecting him to become better as he goes along here. So those are the decisions they have to make. I think they could probably use another defenseman as well if they can get one for depth. You never have enough defensemen. But I think that's the decision now if they decide. And let's face it, Florida and Tampa are in the mix here. I mean, these teams are very close in the standings. The Leafs are back in first place tonight. And the Leafs, it would behoove them to finish first and avoid that 2-3 matchup. But those teams, Bill Zito in Florida, Julien Brisebois in Tampa Bay, those guys have won Stanley Cups. Those guys are probably interested in Shen or other players like the Leafs are interested in players. So that's another part of this is if you don't get them, maybe they do, and that makes it harder for you. So it's going to be a fascinating week leading up to next Friday at 3 o'clock Eastern time and to see what the Leafs do, because if they're out on Shen, are they then in on the guys in Seattle that we've talked about, Yanni Gord and and the other Tanev brother, Brandon Tanev? So are those guys they'd be interested in, and who else might be available out there? So it's going to be a really busy week, particularly in that Atlantic where those three teams are circling each other in the standings, and I think also for possible players that could be available.
There's an unbelievable amount of moving parts here. You've gone over so much here. And it's the truth in that a team that is as good as the Leafs right now, they have to be careful about the moves, but they have to be careful about the moves the other teams make too to improve them.
Yeah.
And you've got Tanev listed right now with a UBI, the dreaded upper body injury.
Yeah.
They might have information on the inside of that we don't have that's going to make them make their decision differently. Because even if he comes back this year, if he suffered a cracked rib, which, you know, you rewatch that play, it's kind of hard to decipher what would have been hurt, but I figure it's something in there. If he's handicapped by that for the rest of the season, they have to make these trade deadline decisions right now based on that type of information we don't necessarily have.
Yeah, and I think that they're going to add. I mean, I think they're going to do whatever they can to add to their group. But I'll also say this: there is a unique chemistry to what they've had going so far this year. So that's also part of it. Is that sometimes you could add too much, or when you put somebody in, right, you're pulling somebody out, and sometimes those players you pull out are more important than really fans see from the outside. So there are many things that go into this, but they are in an interesting spot this year. I'll say it again. The people who've been watching on the Toronto Sports Rush for the whole season know I've said it all year. This team is much more contender than pretender, and they get more contender with each passing day like this, where they go on the road and find a way, as you pointed out, finding different ways to win. This is a team, last year, I think they would have lost this game, quite frankly. I think that they would have opened up too early. The Rangers would have got the run and gun game going, and they would have lost. I think this is the different Leafs team we're seeing this year, where they can find ways to win in different situations. And those are the teams, Kyle, that end up advancing through the playoffs and maybe winning a Stanley Cup. Teams that can win in different ways. And the Leafs are showing us this year that they have much more ability to do that.
Yeah, and it's very easy. You have home ice advantage in the playoffs. You split those and you lose home ice advantage. You go on the road.
That's right.
It's games like tonight. It's games like the last game in Boston that memory recall takes over. It's not 6-1 victories that are lopsided. Any elite hockey team can win big. It's teams that win ugly. It's teams that win with defensive prowess. Like you said, badly outshot, but all the shots from the perimeter. That's another way to win a hockey game. That's not the most obvious thing, and they're finding that this year. As far as I'm concerned, it's time to go now, and they need to figure out how to get deeper into the playoffs and advance through that and overcome. And the experience, maybe Marner's the guy now, having just won that tournament to really take on this pressure load. But they're all playing well, and they're rotating that on night to night. Speaking of Marner, with that assist tonight, he goes 5th all time on the list, tying George Armstrong for Leaf scoring.
Wow.
That's he's having a hell of a month, and that's this is one of the most historic franchises in sports. That is a good list to be on.
Yeah, yes, it's a long, long history of Toronto Maple Leafs, right? So it's impressive. Marner has played outstanding. We go to the Four Nations. He made some terrific plays there. He's making good plays certainly for Toronto. And remember, he's in this contract year, right? There hasn't been, it's been fairly smooth sailing when you think about it. He's played extremely well. You're in Toronto, the mecca of all these conversations, and it hasn't been overwhelming, the discussion about what's going to happen with Marner, because the team has been winning and Marner's played well. And the assumption is when those two things are happening, oftentimes the player stays and signs a contract. It's been pretty obvious that Mitch loves being in Toronto and wants to be there. The cap is going up. This is, let's face it, he's looking for a lot of money. So this is going to be a significant negotiation. But the great news right now is it doesn't seem to be bothering him. He's playing great hockey. He's playing as well as he's ever played, in my view, when you think about his total game. And, that's really the great news, because, as you know, Kyle, up there in Toronto, I mean, if he had been playing poorly, or as struggling, then that's all the talk is, that like he's being overwhelmed by the pressure of playing in a contract year, and nothing could be further from the truth. And he's gained, I think, a little confidence from that performance at the Four Nations. He was part of winning in a big moment. He made a great play to get that puck to McDavid, to score, who scored the game winner. So those are things, they build confidence in individuals. So we'll see where it goes from Marner. It's a long way to go. And the Leafs, they are carrying the baggage of having not won a Stanley Cup since 1967. We all know it. But boy, I think the team has played well this year, and I think there's a lot to look forward to over the next couple of months.
Well, we were talking about too, like they haven't been distracted by his contract situation or his future there and stuff this season. And I think generally taking a step back from there, they haven't been distracted by the media as a whole the way they have in the past this year, because they've been finding ways to win games, as you pointed out early in this broadcast, that they would have lost last season or the season before. And if that translates to deeper playoff success for them, there's a new formula now established in Toronto where I'm sure for a player, part of the decision to come back to Toronto or to go there is, am I okay in that media pressure market? But on the flip side of that is, could there possibly be a better place to deliver a Stanley Cup?
Yeah, probably not. Probably not. And to your, I think part of this that we have to give a lot of credit to Craig Berube, because he is so matter of fact, Kyle. Yeah. Like, teams sometimes take on the personality of their coach, and like, he comes in, he's not bothered by any of the stuff that goes on media wise. He pretty much sets the agenda with the media. He answers their questions. He's kind of, I don't think he's not nasty. He's not belligerent. He just comes in, he answers the questions. It's kind of very matter of fact, and they get on with their business. And I think, his approach, I remember early in the year in preseason, he had a little bit of joke about like the questions they're asking early on. I mean, like, I think his demeanor has been the right demeanor for this time and this team in this town. And so we'll see if that carries on. We got another 6-7 weeks to go. We got the playoffs. And again, I do think as we look at it, I mean, I always look at who you play and how healthy your team is. What's your path and how healthy you are. And if the Leafs could win the division, listen, they could still get knocked out in the first round. The playoffs are hard, but their path would be substantially better if they could avoid that 2-3 matchup in round number 1.
I totally agree. And back to Berube, he's acted as something of a shield for the team this year, if not directly, just by the sheer force of his personality type. It might be perfectly paired for the Toronto market. And further to something we touched on after the Boston game earlier this week when we were talking about it, it was mentioned in the media scrum today. Berube went out of his way to suggest that he is a one goalie kind of guy when it comes to the playoffs. That's going to be a tough decision making, because the panel on the broadcast tonight was speculating you're going to see both guys, but you ride a hot hand, and if the head coach is if that's his style of coaching, then that's what we will see. And we were speculating about it just the other night, but it just seems like they couldn't go wrong with either of these guys right now, and the team playing in front of them knows it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Both of them are playing well. Kyle, I would suggest this about the goalie conversation. Like, we're going to talk about it. The guys on the broadcast are going to talk about it. Everybody's going to talk about it, right? That's the nature of it. The best time to talk about it is in the last week of the season, because then we will know who is healthy, who is playing well, and we'll have a real idea. Because right now, all we're doing is guessing, because we don't know. These guys have had a history, sadly, of having injuries. So let's see who's healthy. If both guys are healthy, then Berube will likely look at it and see whoever in his mind he feels is he's most comfortable with will get the game 1 start. If that person plays well, they will get the game 2 start. If they play well again, they will keep starting. If there's a struggle, that's the beauty of the situation. He's got someone else to go to. I know that in St. Louis, the one thing about Craig Berube, I think the best thing he did in St. Louis that helped them win that Stanley Cup is when Jordan Binnington showed up through injuries and all kinds of different stories in January of that year. He had to play him. He played him. He played well. And guess what? He kept playing him, because there are other coaches that might have been afraid to go with an untested guy. He stuck with Binnington, and Binnington delivered.
He did. And we have Francisco Pinto in the chat right now saying this is the time the Leafs have to go for it now. I noticed that on social more and more this past week. The pressure from the fans is they want them all in at the trade deadline. They want them all in the playoffs. The consensus amongst both analysts like yourself and the layman watching the game is that this is the year to go for it. It's exciting to watch. Flip it to the Rangers really quickly. What are your thoughts on JT Miller now that he's in that Rangers uniform?
I love JT Miller. He could be in any uniform. I mean, he could play for me every single day. He plays hard. He's had to mature in his career. He was drafted originally by the Rangers, and he had his ups and downs there. He's a little bit of a different bird, maybe away from the rink or maybe sometimes on the rink. He's just very, very competitive. And, we know about the stories with Pettersson. He's had other situations where he seems to get like overheated during games, but this guy comes to play. I mean, he comes to play, and he is a battler. And for me, I thought it was a great pickup by the Rangers. I mean, they lucked into it. He wanted to go there. They basically gave up very little, in my opinion, to get him. And so I think it's great for the Rangers. The problem with the Rangers is, though, that they have this roster that's kind of a misfitting roster right now. They have some injuries with Adam Fox, who has not played great all year. I think he's been dealing with a lot of different injuries. He's not been the same guy that he was maybe early last year or in the years past. He's out right now, so that's problematic. Chris Kreider's been out. Some of these guys are getting a little longer in the tooth, too. So, someone like Will Cooley is really, Ranger fans are excited because that's a young player that's delivering for them right now. That's unexpected, but it's going to be a struggle for them. That's a big loss for them tonight to lose in regulation to Toronto at home in a game they were right in. They've just got to get back together. They have Nashville on Sunday at Madison Square Garden, then they got another big one with the Islanders on Monday night at MSG. So for the Rangers, the playoffs started like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it really and truly did, fighting for their lives. Let's look ahead on the Leafs right now. We got Sunday afternoon. They're in Pittsburgh. Winnable hockey game. It gives them some time to get back home for the Monday night game. Another winnable hockey game versus the Sharks. And then, of course, the heavyweight title match Wednesday night out in Las Vegas. Well, it is, right? Like
it's a good one.
This is as qualified as a Stanley Cup preview as if such a thing can even exist in today's game as we've got right now. So let's look into those a little bit.
Got it. You can say that. And you know what? Like you talked about these road games, right? So they got Pittsburgh on Sunday. Now Pittsburgh just rallied to beat Philly the other night. Nedeljkovic was in goal. He got hot when he got pulled, and I think the Penguins kind of rallied around that, and they were able to get a win over Philly. But they've been playing they've really struggled. So, I mean, it's a good opportunity for Toronto. We'll see if they can take advantage of it. Then they come home for San Jose. Tricky spot, right? Just to come home for the one game. We'll see if they can get it done. San Jose is a pesky team. They're obviously not a good team, but they've got guys that can make your life tough, including Macklin Celebrini at the top of their lineup. And then, then they go out west and they play the 3 games. They got Vegas, they get Colorado, and Utah. And I think that will be a really tricky stretch because, Vegas, they've been up and down lately, but they're still a really good team. Colorado with McKinnon and company, they just got Nichushkin back. I mean, they're always dangerous. And then the Utah Hockey Club has been playing very well lately, and they're battling for their lives to try to get in the playoffs. So this 5-game stretch here is interesting because, as you point out, winnable games in Pittsburgh and San Jose, but you can't look past anybody in this league. And then you got that trip out west, and the trade deadline is part of that trip, right? So we will see if they act before they leave, which is always possible. I mean, they could be doing a deal right now, but they have until Friday. We'll see what they decide to do. It'll be a very, very interesting week, both on the ice and certainly off it.
Yeah, and as you just touched on there, too, playing Sunday afternoon in Pittsburgh, rushing back home to play San Jose Monday night, you're straight back out on the road to hop across time zones to play a formidable Las Vegas team. That is barely a home game. Like that's the wheels touching the runway, then you're right back in the air. That's a very tough stretch. And, for all intents and purposes, this many games with one broken up, this is a long, long, long road trip. And I didn't see fatigue amongst, the Marners and the Matthews who played in the Four Nations out there tonight. But there's a part of me that wouldn't be surprised if they drop either the Penguins or the San Jose game, to be honest with you. But this is where this is the character builders right here, right?
That's right. It's not who you play, it's when you play them sometimes. And the situation, like I'll give you a good example, Kyle. On Thursday night, the Winnipeg Jets have been rolling. They've won 11 games in a row. They fly into Nashville. Now they had played Wednesday night in Ottawa. They have to go to Nashville after the game. That's probably about a 2-hour flight with customs, maybe a little bit more. Everything's been going their way. Nashville's sitting there. They just lost a tough one, I think, right before that. as I was watching that, I was like, this is a perfect setup for Nashville, right? Because Winnipeg's not going to keep winning forever, and they just had a game the night before, and they're scrambling around and going through customs, and lo and behold, Nashville won 2-1. So they'll be challenged in Pittsburgh. They'll be challenged by San Jose. This is a hard league. They're in a battle for points. So if they can get those 4 points on Sunday and Monday, boy, it would be important because, as I said, to go back to it, finish first if you can. I mean, no matter what, you're going to face these teams. And at the end of the day, you finish where you finish and you deal with it. But if they could finish first in that division, boy, let Florida and Tampa Bay slug it out in the first round and take your chances playing the first wild card, because most likely Washington will be playing the 8th seed or the second wild card.
And also, I mean, they've had past issues with those two state of Florida teams,
They're
right?
Not alone. They're not alone.
Yeah, well, definitely.
Not alone.
The Lord Stanley runs right up the coast in that state now, but it's, to get out of the first round potentially without that history and get that playoff momentum going, even psychologically, that could play a huge role in getting them deeper in the playoffs or, with any luck, to the final this year.
You got it. There's no question. So it's one game at a time. Busy week, trade deadline. We'll see what happens in Pittsburgh, but they've got to be happy with the way things have unfolded so far this year, and hopefully they get Tanev back at some point. I mean, we don't know, right? I mean, maybe Tanev will play Sunday, maybe he'll play Monday. We don't really know what the situation is with Tanev. We'll just have to wait and see.
It's going to be an interesting week in Maple Leafs world. It's going to be an interesting week in the NHL overall.
Yeah.
And then once that deadline is done, we are in the home stretch, and I'm sure we will be on here discussing the goaltending situation and the injury situation, and the situation that has been the Toronto Maple Leafs for a very, very long time.
Yep. No
All
doubt
right,
about
everyone.
it.
All right, everyone. Once again, thank you for watching us on this Maple Leafs post-game reaction show live here on the Toronto Sports Rush Network, brought to you by BetRivers. Please, if you like the show, like this video, subscribe to this channel. My name is Kyle Andrew on behalf of BetRivers, thanking EJ Hradek, esteemed NHL analyst, for joining us once again. Have a good night, everybody.